The screen is starting to black. That's a good sign. Now in the left top corner dot. And it
Okay.
says Michael
Yeah,
Word.
so it has started. I'll just, when I go and edit it, I'll just kind of cut it to where we actually get started. So I'll just do like a brief intro, and then assuming that not everybody knows who you are, I'll just sort of ask a bit of a bio question at the beginning, even though I know a little bit about you. Okay. So today I'm interviewing Dhammarato, who is a lineage teacher in Thailand. He was ordained under Ajahn Buddhadasa at Wat Suan Mokkh in southern Thailand, which is how I came to know him, just through his association with Ajahn Buddhadasa. And currently he's actively teaching students one-on-one online through Skype. He has a really unique style of instruction where students can call him and he gives them all the time that they need and gives them one-on-one instruction, making references to suttas and personalizing his instruction to their needs. So this is Dhammarato. How are you doing today, Dhammarato?
Everything's okay. Everything's fine.
Excellent. Yeah, so just to start, for people who don't know you too well, I just wanted to begin by asking you just what started you on the path of awakening and what eventually led you to Buddhism and then eventually to teaching in the way that you're teaching now.
Well, I could go all the way back to the age of 3 when I figured out that my mommy loved her church more than she did me. And that set into motion sort of a long-term argument that I had with Southern Baptist. And that led into actually psychology and then into India and then into Buddhism. And we're all talking about the 1970s with all of that, including experimenting with meditation in high school. But the big deal was is that I had enough of whatever it took to get out of the role and get into Asia. But that's a major, major leap. Very few people can muster that. Of making a big change intentionally. Quit your job, pack your bags, leave those bags with somebody else, get on a plane and take a hike.
And in that, so, in the spirit of the times in the 70s, with all of the different traditions that were around, how did you end up finding the Buddhist path and eventually finding Ajahn Buddhadasa?
In India, Goenka was becoming a bit famous, and so doing a retreat with him. And then I ran across a monk in Bodh Gaya who was a student of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and a resident of Wat Chulapatan in Bangkok. And to be honest with you, he absolutely insisted that I go see Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. And I did. And then quite a number of monks, a couple of years maybe, after that, I was visiting Wat Chulapatan, and there he is, sitting there, remembering me that he had seen me in India. That there was a lot of friendship and camaraderie that way. That I felt really warm that he had guided me in the right direction. An interesting side note, by the way, was his name was Dhammarato.
Oh. What does the Rato part of Dhammarato mean?
It actually has similar qualities to the word Nandi, like in Ananda.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it has the quality of being delighted.
Oh. Well, that's very fitting for you.
Yeah. Well, I got the name. I got to live up to it.
Um, I have I brought my Santa Claus mug with me today
All
because
right.
I remember when I first met you, I asked you a little bit about Ajahn Buddhadasa just because I was curious about him, and you told me that he was like Santa Claus. I was wondering if you could say a little more about that, about a little bit more about Ajahn Buddhadasa, what he was like, and what it was like to kind of um, learn the Dhamma from him.
My impression was is that he was chuckling nonstop. That's just the way that I felt about him. Uh, and that I felt that he held me dear, that he cared about me. And that also was very much evident in through Achan Po, who was the abbot of Wat Suan Mok. In fact, he's still the abbot of Wat Suan Mok, 93 now. And so, uh, yeah, it was that was that kind of connectedness, like I had found myself at home, that I found what I needed to find. And that was like 1983.
1983. Okay. So you generally in your discussions with your students, you talk about like a distinction between the Dhamma of ordinary people and what you call the noble Dhamma or the supermundane Dhamma. Could you talk
Hmm.
about that aspect of your teaching, its connection to Ajahn Buddhadasa, and its sort of application in everyday life?
All right. Um, the ordinary Dhamma is the Dhamma of, let us say, the masses in whatever Buddhist country that you're in, which will have a hodgepodge of their old beliefs and a lot of good wisdom out of Buddhism and things like that. But ordinary Buddhism, on its own, is not, let us say, freedom, that one must go from the ordinary through the noble path to the supermundane. You're not actually going to rise above the world without rising above the world. That's basically what it means. And in that regard, we can say that yes, in ordinary Buddhism, you have an eightfold path. You have the Four Noble Truths. You have all of that kind of stuff. But in the Noble Dhamma is that that's liberating, because you got to see the dukkha. When you can see it, you can avoid it. Look and see it right now, or reflect upon it. That we've just been. It's like when you're deep in your own mire, it's good to remember that you walked right into it. And let's look at how that happened, so that we can step back out and decide that we're not going to step in that kind of stuff anymore. We can recognize that what we're angry at is not worth being angry at. And most of that would mean then is that most of the situations we find ourselves in are manufactured social situations, game playing, and other things like that. That though we feel like we're being ganged up on, really we are not Frankenstein, and we are not being confronted by a village full of angry people with pitchforks and clubs and axes and whatnot like that. And that's the way we feel. And in fact, that's not the reality, that's just a feeling. And that the real situation is not really dangerous at all. That in fact it may not be a mob, it may be only a couple, or it may not be any couple, it may even be only one person who's criticized you, and even in that case, it may be you inside just doing the criticism. And yet we feel like that we're being besieged, mental proliferations. All right, so um, when we can see that stuff, we put a stop to it and recognize that we're not besieged, we're not under danger, that everything is already okay if we just see it that way. which is also a kind of a different mentality or a different view of the world. Like the right noble view is
Mhm.
actually more of a viewing, a looking, rather than as a seeing a way and then thinking that the things are that way. No, things keep changing, so we have to keep looking, keep modifying, keep watching, keep investigating, and especially what's happening right now,
Mhm.
because that's where the dukkha lies, is in not watching it when it's happening, and then we step right in it. So when we begin to change our attitude, see, we are all born with the attitude of being a victim. Babies are victims, no doubt about it. They can't change their diaper. They don't speak the language. They can't walk and talk. Not one tender infant picks up a sword and shield and goes whacking around at politicians and becoming successful at it. Doesn't happen that way. Things are a very, very slow process. And even in our childhood, the child is still a victim. He's got to do what he's told to do, go to school, pick up his toys. And as kids, we begin to resent all of the stuff that we're told to do. And we don't want to be told what to do. So we give ourselves those rules. Oh, if you tell yourself not to do that, then somebody else is not going to have to tell you not to do that. And so we imprint that way. And we continue along being in that victim's position of following the rules to get along, go along to get along, do what we're told to do, and resent it.
Mhm.
And then feel guilty about resenting it. Sometimes rebelling against it. Okay, we all have this. And this all is just merely different forms of dukkha that we lash upon ourselves through these sets of rules that actually wind up defining our personality. And so when we change the rules, we can actually thereby change the personality. You don't have to be the person that you think that you were, that what you were was something that was trying to follow a set of rules and get it right. And when we stop following the rules and start being friends with ourselves on the inside, nourishing ourselves, then we can be friends and nourish each other and stop playing those games that we used to play for dominance. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of uh, understand what you're saying, so it sounds like as kids, because we're in sort of a helpless position and things are sort of just happening to us, we're not in a state of wisdom. We grow up under the condition of thinking things are happening, but that we don't have any control of it. Is that kind of what you mean when you talk about?
Yes, exactly. We grow up under the impression that we're out of control, and
Mhm.
without looking closely, we continue to believe that we're out of control. And what the practice of the Dhamma is, the noble Dhamma, is to start controlling it,
Mhm.
to start controlling the mind, to start taking the unwholesome thoughts that are just random all over the place, making us feel bad. We've talked ourselves into feeling bad. Now it's time to talk ourselves into feeling good, to take control over the situation, to come out of our victimhood into being a lion, to being a champion, becoming the feeling of successful, which is, by the way, in the Eightfold Noble Path, this is the Samma Sankappa, or the right intention. Our right intention is to win, to be on top of our game. And we get there through the sukha, which is exactly opposite of dukkha. And sukha is defined as feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling comfortable, and feeling satisfied. And then on top of that is feeling successful at it. We can do this. We can continue to feel safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied because we've got the skills to do it. But it takes a lot of practice.
That's a good point. I've really admired just there was a couple of videos I saw where you talked to some younger students, and since I teach high school, I really felt a lot of compassion watching that discussion because it seems that anxiety is a major feeling these days amongst young people. So watching you sort of use the Dhamma to help talk a younger student out of their anxiety was kind of heartwarming for me to watch. Um, and that sort of core sense of insecurity that I guess is common in human life, but why do you think it's so much more common these days?
I don't.
No, you don't think so?
No, no. People have been uptight for centuries, literally. If anything, things are getting better.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, things are getting better. Things
Yeah,
are getting so bright I have to wear shades. I think that's the song.
here I am talking to you. You're in Thailand and I'm in California, so that's pretty awesome. I couldn't have imagined this when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I couldn't do that way back when, exactly. And not only that, but you have heard the expression, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Hmm.
Now, we have to explore that a little bit because the reality is that that's not exactly the case. Is more the case is, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, but first it's going to really piss you off. Now, why is that? Well, because the truth is going to set us free from the lies that we've been told, the lies that we cling to, the lies that we love the most, the things that we're delusional about. But let's back up just a little bit, back to ye shall know the truth. Well, wow, that's a new one. They've
Hmm.
been saying that for 2,000 years, and wow, has the Catholic Church and all kinds of creatures been keeping, make sure that you don't know the truth, that you want to know, they want you to know what they want you to know,
Hmm.
not the reality. And that over time, that's kind of gotten out of hand. First was with cuneiform tablets, then we come across block writing, and then we come for Gutenberg's movable type. Then we go through television and radio and electronics, and now we've got the internet. Now, there's going to be a whole lot of crap published, but eventually it kind of sifts itself down, and the truth will come out.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, then in fact there's many different indications of that, including that the younger people are leaving religion and the Republican Party in droves. Christianity is literally falling apart. Why is that? Is because the kids don't believe it anymore. You see, when I was in high school in rural South Carolina, the kids were discouraged from going off to university. They wanted to keep them on the farm, keep them at home, give them a job in town, whatever like that, because they knew then, even in the 1960s, that university education was dangerous for a Christian kid, unless you could get him into one of the many Bible colleges they have in South Carolina, or they did back then.
Hmm.
But that didn't work so well in so many cases. But now those kids in South Carolina, they've got their cell phones, they've got internet, they've got the ability to go look for finding the things that they want to see, and their moms and dads can't keep them at home with sheltered.
Hmm.
Okay, so in fact, there has been a lot of interference with good education for many, many years. What the Republicans are doing now is just the same old thing they've been always doing. They're just being caught at it now because guess what? The truth is going to be known. Things are going to become public. And that's kind of the cleansing that society needs to go through, even though we as society, we don't really want to see how dirty things actually are. We'd rather just go along to get along. But here's the point about that. And that is that for each individual one of us,
Hmm.
seeing how dirty politics, religion, all of that kind of stuff is also liberating. Knowing the truth about that stuff is liberating, and one of the most important things to know as part of that truth is that that world out there
Mhm.
is not yours. It's not yours to pine over. It's not yours to fix. It's not yours to struggle with. That the only real issues that we need to deal with are the ones inside, and most of those have to do with, why do I want to go fix that stuff out there when I can fix what's in here instead? Because I can fix what's in here, and I can't fix what's out there. Especially since a whole lot of people don't want me to fix what's out there.
Mhm.
They want to fix it their way. So, what we do with that is understanding that we can rise above that world. This is where the supramundane, or in the Pali, the lokatara, comes in. And that is that we can transcend all of that stuff, be above the world. That the world is not my issue, it's not my problem. There's a saying, every one of us, every human being is an emperor of their own pile of dirt. The question is, are you going to be buried under your pile of dirt like a victim? You're going to be clawing your way out of it, or are you going to be sitting on top of your world?
There's a sense in which we can think of that pile of dirt as the five aggregates.
Well, yeah. And we can also think of it, all of that is the Sankara, part of
Uh-huh.
the five aggregates, in the sense that that's all the dirt.
Yeah.
That's all the crap. That's all the sewage. And here we are sitting on top of it rather than struggling with it anymore.
I wonder if I could pick up a couple of the things you said and kind of draw them together. You were talking about Christianity, and I was thinking about Ajahn Buddhadasa was sort of famous for telling all the Westerners who were sitting in front of him, like, you didn't need to come all the way to Thailand to be free. You
You were
could
pulling your leg hard.
onto the root or the core of your own religion. He basically said if everybody understood their own religion, it would kind of come to the same place. And then you also had mentioned universities. So I'm wondering if do you think that each of the religions, Buddhism and other religions, and even maybe even what we learn at universities, if there is a way in which they do come to the same place.
um, well, first off, we can talk about things at two different levels. One would be the ordinary level, and then the other would be at the supramundane level. And that the Christianity has tried to control the mundane level because that's the only thing that they could control, was the mundane level, what school the kid goes to, and that kind of stuff. All
Mhm.
right. And that the supramundane level was left for early childhood. They have that saying of train up a child and the way he should go, and they generally mark that at age 7.
Mhm.
Okay. And then that child will go the way that he's been told to go. Well, that's actually quite true. And that's what creates a destiny. But when we recognize that that's what's happened, we see the truth in it. That truth shall set us free. If we're willing to become free, we do not have to go by the program that we were given in childhood. That we can change that program. But the place and the way to change it is whenever that program comes up. As soon as it comes up, that's the time to do something about it. Is when it comes up as a thought or as a feeling. That by the time we have it come out of our mouth, it's getting kind of late. But what we say becomes what we do. What we do becomes our habits, and our habits become our destiny. And destinies are great big things, like great big ships, really hard to turn around. But what we can do is to change this thought, one thought at a time, over and over again, until we get into the habit of having better thoughts at those times when we need to have those better thoughts. Like, oh, this is just a game that's being played. This is not my problem. as opposed to them's fighting words.
Those are two very different types of people, or two very different mind moments, you could say. So what would you say
Same
that,
people, different mind moments. Exactly.
I've encountered this, but what would you say to people who have a very, very difficult time of seeing that there's even a program there to wake up to and escape from? Like, how would you help those people wake up to the fact that they are conditioned and that they are following this program and it's not serving them? How would you help those people wake up and see that and make a change?
Actually, I can't. Just like you heard the expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. This is also true of the Dhamma, that some students, most people, in fact, are not ever going to be students of the Dhamma. There's certain kinds of people who will not get anything out of it. And an example would be with the psychotherapists that say that they can't much help a sociopath or a psychopath
Mm-hmm.
because the psychopaths can't see the dukkha. So if one is narcissistic or terrified of seeing his own dukkha, in other words, he's gotten himself to the point that he has to be a certain way. And so he can't see anything through that because that would terrify him. Therefore, he's stuck. And one example of that would be then someone who would argue. They're out there seeking the truth, and when the truth hits them, they argue with it. They can't accept it. The truth will not set them free. It will piss them off every time. Okay, so there's a whole lot of people that are out there like that they really do want to know the truth, but when they hear it, they don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, all in all, I would say that only about 10% of people are even capable of getting the Dhamma. But wow, 10%? I mean, if we got, let us say 15 million Buddhists, 10% of that's 150,000 Buddhas running around. Yeah, we can handle that. Pardon?
That's actually a pretty high percentage. In medicine, that would be like normal. Like, I think for something to be rare, it has to be like significantly under 5% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Actually,
that's the opposite.
you could actually look at it in the sense of the placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact, enlightenment is the placebo effect that you took a Buddha pill and you got it. I mean, how easy could it be?
Maybe we should discuss some of these hot topics that you see just for fun, right?
I thought that was a hot topic. I just said.
Yeah, that is a hot topic. What made me think of it. But words like enlightenment, awakening, liberation, stream entry, arahatship, things like this are really, really, and jhana. These are all really things that people are interested in these days. And
Yeah, it's called greed. Yeah, it's spiritual materialism.
Mhm.
I want this attainment. I want that attainment. I want this Boy Scout badge.
Uh-huh.
I
Merit
want
badge.
the badge for a merit badge for humility, and a merit badge for jhana, and a merit. That's the mentality of the West.
Mhm.
And the whole point of all of this is to stop wearing labels because you're already okay. You don't need the labels. And if you can be that, if you can come out labelless, then somebody's bound to put a very fancy label on that. And that's where all of this stuff, enlightenment. So let's look at the word enlightenment. It's a very interesting word, The word enlightenment really has nothing at all to do with Buddhism. And
Mhm.
it has everything to do with a great big conflict that the Catholic Church was having with literally everybody. They were after the poets. They were after the contractors. They were after the the Bible readers. They were after the scientists. They were after the musicians. Anything that was not church music, they were not on it. Okay, and so this brought about, or was part of, the Age of Enlightenment or the Renaissance, especially with the Age of Reason. That let's look at this. Let's not take tradition. Let's not take what the old folks have been telling us for centuries, and let's figure it out. So that was the Age of Enlightenment, and so you can see that that kind of word would be get stuck onto the practice of the teaching of the Buddha, except that the Age of Enlightenment was a pretty bloody time. A lot of guillotines happening in France and all of that kind of stuff. And so there's not any good reason to use that other than it just kind of got stuck someplace on it.
I guess you can say lightning, since people's heads were coming off, they got much lighter.
Oh, yes, that's right. Right, exactly. How to lose 20 pounds of ugly flab in a hurry. And so, but we can look at the word enlightenment for its value. And the word enlightenment then has the quality of light, like turn the lights on, light of day, the ability to see. This is the knowledge that we've been talking about. You shall know the truth because we're going to shine a light on it. We're going to get the facts out. And then when we see what a mess there is, we then begin to get the strong desire to clean up that mess. Okay, and when we get it all cleaned up, now that's freedom. And so the knowledge and deliverance is what brings about the freedom. But like I said, it's going to piss you off when you find out what a mess there is and how much you've got to clean up.
I had this experience the other day. I was sitting in the jacuzzi at the gym and the bubbles were on, the jets were going, right? And they're on a timer, and there was probably 6 strangers around me, and the timer suddenly turned off and the jets turned off, and then as the jacuzzi became clear, all of a sudden I noticed that there was human hair floating all around me in the jacuzzi, and I was like, oh, gross. Oh. It made me point that when
ignorance is bliss.
when the mind clears up and you see what's actually in there, it can be very disturbing.
Well, you chose to get disturbed.
Yeah.
You had a rule in there. Oh, when you see hair in the jacuzzi, you're supposed to get disturbed. You said, yes, ma'am, I'll get disturbed when I see hair in the jacuzzi. And then here you go do it.
Yeah.
Or if you change that rule into, wow, that is interesting hair in the jacuzzi, then you might have.
I'll just let it clean my arms and chest. That's okay.
Yeah, I want to take a shower anyway. I'm all right.
Yeah.
No problem. That's back to that point that we were making earlier about most of life's traumas are manufactured, made up, not important, created. Like your reaction to that here was a created situation that you were absolutely, in reality, in no danger.
Yeah.
That was the reality.
Upon reflection, it made me think of, stopping, letting the mind settle, become clear so I can see the dukkha that's in it and, remove the causes, I guess you can say. So as an
exactly, all right. And so if we can see hair in the jacuzzi with balance and equanimity, then maybe when we turn the hydrant off inside the mind and let the gunk settle, we can see it easily also. Whether they don't know, I don't want to. You talk about hair. This stuff is terrible. So that in that regard, that's the whole point, is that we don't really want to see the cause of our suffering, because it always becomes our own responsibility. That never does the blame game work. You cannot pin the responsibility for anything on anyone else. because the only really thing that's going on is not what happened, it's our reaction to it.
Mhm.
And when we learn to control the way that we react to the world, we're the king. You can live the way that you want to because you know that the world is going to do what it wants to do. And guess what? It's none of your business. All you have to do is just stay out of danger, stay out of trouble. You don't have to fix anything.
There's a sense in which, in what you're saying, that the jets in the jacuzzi or in the jets in the mind is fear, that there's a sort of underlying fear that's preventing us from wanting to look directly at what's going on inside.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh, Basically, um, let us put it this way in the sense of three levels of doubt. The first level of doubt is the victim's position of, I can't fix it myself. Who can I get to fix it? Maybe I can get a plastic Jesus, or maybe I can put some money in the collection plate, or maybe I can get a DNA specialist to look up my DNA, or maybe I can go to an astrologer, or maybe a priest, or maybe a psychologist, or maybe a guru. Okay, and there's maybe this guy and maybe that guy and maybe a deity or a god or whatever, but we're always looking for help, which is also the same thing as looking for blame. Because who's going to help us is the one that we're blaming for getting us in this place in the first place. He did it. God, go do your job and fix me the way I want to be fixed, is the kind of position that we are in as a victim, is finding somebody else to blame for our predicament. This is where all of the guru worship and all of that kind of stuff comes from. So, once we come to the understanding of the second noble truth, is that greed, ill will, and delusion is the cause of my suffering, not what somebody said to me or what somebody else did to me. And when we begin to say that, then the second level of doubt presents itself into, can I gain the skills I need to come out of that second noble truth? And the answer to that is, sure, give it a go right now. I want to see you do it. Come on, I want to see you. I want to see you smile. Come on, there you go. Right. That's it. That's all it takes. And we need to practice that over and over and over and over again, because we got every new moment as an opportunity to smile, darn you, smile. To have a joyful life. Our choice, why is it that we keep choosing to be kind of quasi-miserable all the time? Why
Why,
is it? Well, that's how we were trained. Go ahead.
I was going to say, why is it that we prefer um, happiness that comes at the acquisition of a cause, or conditional happiness, but we don't have any interest in unreasonable or unconditioned happiness?
Because we were trained that way. We were trained that way. That you're not supposed to be happy on your own. You're supposed to wait for mommy to give you a gift, and then you're supposed to appreciate her, because she's got insecurities, and so mommy passes her own insecurities down to her child, from father to son, mother to daughter, generation after generation. Just more and more layers of crap is added to the kid. As society gets bigger and fatter and more robust, every kid is born and raised with more and more and more ridiculous rules that we don't need to follow at all. Sometimes drowning in rules, to where really is there's only one rule that we need, and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha. That goes both ways. I'm not going to cause myself any trouble or anybody else, because if I cause somebody else trouble, they'll try to get me back. Humans are revengeful animals.
Mhm.
I know, I've been there, done that. At one time, you would not want to cross me. I'll get you.
So I would have wanted to cross like maybe 40 years ago.
Well, I'm more subtle at it now. I can slice and dice someone and serve them for supper, and they don't even know how delicious they are. So, uh, this is where the Dhamma is going to, is that we stop caring about the world and start caring about making our own little world as pleasant as possible for all the people around us. Make friends. Enjoy your life. Things are really great. Hot dogs are great. But we don't just let that happen because we have been told to have expectations that we're supposed to work. Delayed gratification, all of that kind of stuff. But really, joy, security, comfort, and happiness can be had by just remembering that it can be had. And then we go back to the old habit. Never mind, start again, come back. You can be happy again. All you have to do is remember that it's okay.
Like to come back, don't they?
Pardon?
Those old habits do like to keep coming back, don't they?
Actually, you could say that it's very much like in the mountains, that waterfalls create deep crevices, rivers create deep channels, okay? And that same kind of neurocircuitry happens within the mind. So that those neuron paths, they get kind of overloaded with this kind of circuitry, and they're able to handle large volumes of unhappy data. But we could begin to retrain the mind to have an alternate path, to have some happy neurons connect together, so that we can let the old highway of unhappy thoughts kind of dwindle and die off over time. That in fact, one of the things that they pointed to is that it takes about 7 years to replace all the neurons in the brain, which means that for the average Joe Blow, 7 years ought to do it. And guess what? That's exactly what the Buddha said, 7 years.
So is there a sense in which then we can say that stream entry might be more of a stream change, and that we're changing those deep...
All right, let's look at this. So if you want to talk about the Sotapan as a stream enterer, what does the word enter mean, and what is the stream? Okay, that basically taking a dive or going into it rather than sitting on the shore and playing with this kind of river. Now we've got to change it. We're going to actually jump in. Yeah. All right. And what is the stream is the stream of reality, the Dhamma, that we're not going to be sitting on the shores of corrected memory and concepts, and we're going to go with the flow. So going with the flow is all that, I mean, we've been going with the flow for all my lifetime, and nobody thought a word about it. But when you use the word stream entry, now it's a hot shot word. And all it really means is, hey, let's just chill. Let's just go with the flow. Now, there's more to it than that, in the sense of these kind of doubts that we were talking about before. Once we have the position that we can do this, we also, the third level of doubt is, what is the correct method or the path? And the way that it's expressed is knowledge and vision of what is and is not the path. Because everything that we've been doing so far obviously is not the path, because we haven't gotten where we want to be. So what is the path is to be where you are and like it. So once we come through those 3 layers of doubt, we are actually on top of the world, because we know what to do. And so we become really dedicated then to the Dhamma. Well, actually, one of the major points is that we're beginning, or we're actually now to the point of being willing to look at all of our trash. The stuff that we used to hide from, deny, don't want to look at it. All of that stuff about you shall know the truth and the truth shall net you free, but first it's going to piss you off. We get over that. Oh, I would rather know the truth and be free than have to put up with my own delusions about
Mhm.
what I don't like about the truth. Okay, so we begin to start looking at and seeing our hate, our greed, our delusions. We can see it now because finally we're really willing to look because we can see how valuable it is to not dabble in the dukkha. We could be free from it, but we have to really be on guard for it and be willing to admit when we did step in it rather than ignore it.
Mhm.
Al Sharpton has a little joke about when he was a little kid, he and his cousin got into the blueberry pie. And
Oh,
here these two little kids are blackberry pie all over their face. And Granny comes in and says, "What happened to my blueberry pie?" And those kids say, "I don't know, Granny. I don't know." Okay. Well, that's how we often live our own lives, is that even though we've been in the pie,
uh-huh.
we don't want to admit it.
Mhm.
And here in this level, at the point of the soda pine, is that he really does want to see all of the problems so he can fix them. We're willing to really look.
Mhm.
That's part of the entry into the stream, is taking a really, really good look. And we're willing to do that. They're not wanting to hide from it anymore. Sometimes we do, but mostly we got the attitude of, hey, let's fix it rather
Mhm.
than hide it away and let it get worse.
And that is a major change because I found that a lot of people would rather hold on to their beliefs about themselves and about the world and the suffering that goes with it than than try to change it at all, or even admit
Right.
that there's a problem. That they'd rather be right than be happy is the best way I could put it.
Exactly. And so that's the vast majority of people, for one reason or another. They'll find one thing or another to prevent them from getting into the change model that yes, they can change. Okay. One of them is that first layer of doubt. Oh, I couldn't change. I got to get somebody to do it for me. Or the
Mhm.
second level of doubt is that, oh, I wish I could change, but I can't. Or that third level of doubt is that, oh, I don't have a clue about what to do. And so when those three things are cleaned up, now we've got a plan. That's and what is that plan? Live according to the plan. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to, we know what life is like now. We know that we can either wallow in our dukkha or we can change it by seeing it. And so this is the basic point about nobility, is that willingness to change in order to get out of the dukkha. And that's basically marked by that point of the sotapan. Then, in fact, you know that a lot of people dabble with and want to ordain.
Mhm.
Many of them do. That's the point. Are you willing to actually ordain? You can see dukkha well enough that you actually are willing to make a complete lifestyle change to get out of it. And most people are, no, no, no. I don't see dukkha well enough to drop all of this. uh, and so um, there is the path for the layman,
Mhm.
and it still has to do with that quality of the dedication to the path. That the only thing that we really care about is keeping out of the dukkha, to see that dukkha and stay out of it. And that's the only real point. Which means then, in the case of being married, the easy way is to let the wife be right on everything. Anything that she wants, let her have it. Women are better with money, better with houses, better than everything with the guys. The biggest problem a woman would have is trying to convince her husband to let her do it the way she wants to. So the Dhamma dude is going to say, okay, I got it. Let her do whatever she wants to do, and I'm going to sit here on the porch and enjoy my life.
Well, you
This is
just
the life of the householder, is to let the wife run the business, run the house. Go
I
ahead.
was you did mention earlier that the world is much better today, and that is a major shift. That in the past 50 years or so, we stopped keeping women out of making decisions and shaping the world, and now they've been participating now for a while, and the world has changed a lot since then. But I wanted to, most people have to kind of live in dual income households these days, so both partners in a marriage or a relationship would have to work. So you mentioned willingness to ordain, and I was thinking, how do we ordain, so to speak, the mind when we're still going to work, we're still paying our mortgage, still raising our kids, we're still doing all of these things. How do we ordain the mind without getting ordained and going to a monastery?
Well, it's a process,
Uh-huh.
and the process actually has a particular set of, let us call them values, that the Buddha talks about it in the sense of the four requisites,
Mhm.
and the four requisites means requirements, or let us call it the poverty line for all human beings. Below the poverty line, there is actual suffering. So within the Buddha's context, uh, the requisites means that if you don't have that requisite, that there's actually going to be some natural dukkha. But if you do have the requisites, then that's all you need. They're just requirements at that level. The more that you have is of no value. Enough is enough. That's the whole point. Okay, so what are those four requisites? One is just enough shelter, just adequate shelter, which could mean downsizing, inviting new people to come live with you, all kinds of different options in the sense of not holding tightly to this is my house because the house is saying the same thing and the house is more right. You're saying this is my house and the house is saying this is my human.
Little Tyler
And
Durden
that
in there.
and the house is the boss because anything that house needs, you go jump to it.
Mhm.
If the sewer needs fixed, you go fix it. All right. So when we begin to understand that our material possessions often own us, then we
Yeah.
can begin to change our attitude about them. So just enough clothing, just enough food, just enough shelter, just enough medicine. Now, there are all so many people in Western society that are missing one of those, or maybe two of those items. But within the context of the monkhood, that's where the whole monkhood is set up: is to have the monks to have just enough housing, just enough clothing, just enough food, just enough medical attention, so that they can live a happy, easy life.
Mhm.
But the Western mindset is the more the better. Got to have a bigger house. Let's build an extra room. Let's
Yeah.
put in a swimming pool.
Right.
Let's remodel the kitchen. Right? Okay. So if you don't remodel the kitchen and don't put any of that stuff away, then you can pile all of that money up and come to Thailand for a couple of years earlier than you would have.
Yeah.
Come at 35 instead of 37.
Something I recommend. Happiness in Thailand is contagious. The air.
Yes, it is.
But
Did you know that there's actually 12 guys here in Thailand now? We've actually got a Sangha group
oh
for the
wow,
guys that are currently in Thailand.
from your students, from your
Mhm.
great. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
So, um, The whole point then for the layman is to learn that anything above those four requisites is something that the wife can take care of. When I was in India, there was a book. It's a Muslim book, and it's a joke book, a Muslim joke book, and it has the name of it is Mullah Nasruddin. And
Mhm.
these are various stories about Mullah Nasruddin. And so one of the stories is that the guys in the neighborhood came to him and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I only do the important things. I let all the unimportant things be left to the wife." And they says, "Oh, well, what's that?" And he says, "Oh, what house we live in, what clothes I wear, where the money goes, what school the kids go to, what kind of car we have, all of the really unimportant things in life." And they says, "Well, what do you do?" And he says, "Oh, I take care of only important things, like does God exist? And where is happiness?" Okay? So that's the way that we can, in fact, live our lives in the Dhamma is by devoting ourselves to the Dhamma
Mhm.
in that the lifestyle, whatever lifestyle that you're in. You've got a car, sure. If you want to live at the Wat, take the car to the Wat. It's okay. That everything is really easy. It's a matter of changing our attitude. And so you can change your attitude of the, "oh, I've got to work," into the attitude of, "hey, gosh, I don't have to work anymore. I can just sit around and enjoy life. Yeah, I'll go to the office and I'll sit there and enjoy that too."
Yeah. I feel like I see sometimes like there's like two potential streams in every moment where you can go the way of craving and you can go the way of Dhamma. Like when I'm on my way to work and I'm late for work and then somebody really slow pulls in front of me, immediately those two options come up. Like I can either like let go of craving and relax into the moment, put on a smile and just be with the Dhamma, or I can get annoyed that somebody really slow pulled in front of me on my way to work and
Uh-huh.
perpetuate the habit of
Right. Don't in America, don't they call that road rage? And it's very, very common.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. But presence of mind is, "oh, I'm really glad that guy foot cut in front of me. That gives me an opportunity to slow down, not move too fast. Oh, look, it's a beautiful day after all." But
Yeah.
while we're in a hurry, we're not seeing what's passing by. We're way too far oriented out into the future, in a hurry to get someplace.
Mhm. So I was going to ask you, just because I love this, Buddhadasa talked about Dhamma language and people language, and you talk about the
Mhm.
mundane and the noble versus ordinary view. So I was wondering if we can, like, for fun, like look at noble applications of different concepts in Buddhism that people talk about and get really confused about, and see if there's like a noble way of looking at these different concepts. We, we,
All
we
right.
we talked about stream entry already, and but how about the concept of the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha? Is there an ordinable way of looking at the triple gem?
Well, let's go back and talk about the two kinds of languages first,
Okay.
okay, and get that, let us say, with some understanding. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa actually uses the analogy of a balloon and a knife. Balloon language versus a knife language. Now, what is the balloon language? Is the polite behavior that it underlies all of the grief, unhappiness, and misery that we have, but we have this kind of light balloon language at the top of it. Um, uh, Good example is what they call Southern hospitality. Southern hospitality is real until you've been there for 4.5 minutes.
Like bless your heart.
Yeah, bless your heart, and I'm about to stab it if you don't get out of here. So, uh, the uh, uh, the idea of recognizing that each one of us has the capability of making a choice every moment, and that we've been making a choice, but generally the easy way out, which was the way we did it last time. And so we live our lives reacting. We keep reacting or acting in the same way over and over and over again because it's a habit. But what we're now doing is we have the invitation to remember to look at what we're doing, to investigate, to recognize that the way that we've been doing was painful. Let's not do it that way. Let's do it a happy way.
Mhm.
And so we begin to change one thought at a time over and over and over again, and that eventually begins to change our attitude. But we have to keep practicing. A lot of students will get caught in the place of, oh, I've gotten far enough. This is really great. And then they stop practicing, and all of a sudden they're miserable again. They don't even know why. Or the analogy would be that a kid is on a swing and they say, push me, daddy. And so when we start the swing going, it's a bit of work. But
Mhm.
after we get the kid going, it's fairly easy to keep pushing and keep pushing. But
Mhm.
if we forget, or we get distracted, or we stop, the swing will come back down to the 0 point of gravity,
Mhm.
okay, which would be the default position. The default position is generally our lowest point, which is where we live our lives. And we can push the right effort, and get things swinging again. But if we don't keep pushing, it's going to go back down to the 0 point, or the
Mhm.
low point of gravity. So this is a good example of how to practice, is get it going, get your joy going, and then keep pushing that joy. Keep pushing it just a little more every time. Enough, just enough. Just like with the four requisites, we also have just enough knowledge.
Mhm.
Not all the knowledge, just enough to know that we can be happy. We don't have to have all of the stuff figured out. We don't have to know all the teachings of the Buddha, just enough.
That's a big one for me.
Just, yeah, just enough will do you. A little dab will do you. All we have to do is to know enough to remember that I can get myself out of the mess that I feel I'm in right now. That's the basic of it, is that we can change if we remember we can change.
Would that the knife in Buddhadasa's analogy, the balloon and the knife?
Yes, let's look at that knife for a second, because that knife actually cuts right through.
Mhm.
That is, in fact, in a way, dangerous. That
Mhm.
that knife language will cut right through into the truth, and the truth's going to set you free, but it's likely to piss you off first. So that's why noble language, Dhamma language, is referred to as a knife, is because it's going to cut things open. In fact, you have probably heard it often used in connection with Buddhism, the words wholesome and unwholesome,
Mhm.
which comes from the Pali word of kusala and akusala,
Mhm.
which not only is just a region of India, but it's a particular kind of grass, a big, big, heavy grass that's even grassier, bigger grass than lemongrass. Big, bushy stuff. And they would, in the old times of the Buddha, would take boards and bricks and logs and things on this big grass and get it dried out and flattened out, and it could be used as a knife. And so when things are kusala, what that means is that we can cut that stuff open. We can see what's inside. And akusala means that we're still blind. We can't see what's in it. So that's what unwholesome means, is that it's dark, obscure, difficult to fathom, dangerous, etc. And kusala means we can whack that thing open. Sort of also like the balloon. Guess what happens to the balloon? It pops or it gets lost. It's ephemeral, it doesn't last. But the knife language, last, is the gift that keeps on giving. What is that? The ability to cut things open. Or,
Mhm.
again, back to the ability to see. So akusala is the point, mean we can't see. We can't cut it open. in English, in both computers and especially electrical engineering, they have the word diagnosis. They also use that in medicine. The word diagnosis actually means to cut open,
Hmm.
diag, in order to see or to know. Gnosis. Diagnosis means to separate, to cut out. That if you've got a television that's malfunctioning, you can isolate this area of it or isolate that area to find out where the problems are. This is what diagnosis is. And so this is what we mean by that Dhamma language is the language that we use to be able to cut things open so that we can see the dukkha.
This kind of makes me think of is this knife you're talking about is I think there's probably some connection to the notion of satori, sudden awakening, because when like a certain knowledge is true enough and sharp enough to reach the ignorance that it's the antidote to, the mind will sort of switch into an instant dispelling of that ignorance. I
Mm-hmm.
always analogy of you know being a child in the dark and thinking there's a monster in the corner, and then yelling for your parents, and they come in, they turn the lights on, and the monster vanishes because it was actually just the shadow of a coat rack on the wall. So that the lights coming on is like that sharp, true knowledge entering the mind, and instantly the delusion of the monster and then the fear that was dependent on that delusion will vanish as soon as the knowledge enters the mind.
That kid
I think,
needs to keep doing that for the rest of his life. To keep
yeah.
turning the lights on and keep saying that his monsters are not real, they're imagined.
Hmm.
That's what we do. That's the whole teaching right there,
Hmm.
is to stop guessing what's in the dark and shine a light on it. Cut it open. Take a look.
I've heard you say to some of your students that they need to sort of become okay with not knowing something. And I feel like in relation to what we're talking about now, that's sort of, since we're not okay with not knowing, we fill it with imagination and superstition and fantastical magical thinking. And if we just were okay with it knowing, we wouldn't constantly make.
Try to figure it out. Right. That's one of the sins that we've inherited from our fathers is
Mhm.
the need to know. Humans have got it really bad. The need to know. Here, the dogs, they don't need to know much of anything and they can just be happy. The only thing they need to know is they're a stranger in the yard. That's the only thing they need to know.
Mhm.
Or where's the groceries? That's the only thing that they need to know. But look at us humans. We need to know all kinds of things. We need to know the weather. We need to know who voted. We need to know who's running. We need to know our taxes. Just life is absolutely full of stuff that we feel that we need to know, and we're in a panic when we don't know. Where the reality is that we don't need to know any of that stuff. All we need to know is, oh, I could be happy right now. That's all we need to know. I don't need to read the next 20 sutras. I've got enough right here. Wow, I got enough. This is good enough. I've got enough. That's the way to begin to think in the sense of the four requisites. Only the basics, just enough. Learn to be satisfied with very little, and then you can be satisfied with anything.
When you say that, the irony I remember is actually, I had a very profound awakening experience at Swan Book that lasted for many months afterwards, and I actually sort of lost it when I started filling my head with the teachings. I mean, it kind of came back and helped me in the end because there was also the habits coming back, but developing this obsession with like knowing the names and methods and then the suttas and all that stuff kind of eventually became an obstacle. And I remember Buddhadasa talking about becoming Dhamma heavy or developing a white darkness from having too much knowledge or constantly seeking knowledge. And that's a hard one to get rid of.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Exactly. That's what we're referring to. And so many Westerners get caught in the thirst of, well, I've gotten all of this Dhamma and it is so good. Maybe if I read more Dhamma, I'll get something even better.
Yeah.
Okay. Rather than the point is that, well, I've got enough Dhamma.
Mhm.
Let me capitalize on this. Let's fulfill this one. Uh, I did that with music when I was a kid, in the sense of that I was never satisfied to really, really learn this piece well. I'd get it slapstick and get it good enough, and then I wanted to go play something else. I never would actually refine and get down correctly the piece of music because I was greedy for the next thing.
Mhm.
And I can reflect back upon that now and recognize that happened in every aspect of my life. Being in a hurry.
So in a sense, being satisfied is actually a really great skill because then you can stay with what you're working with instead of moving on to the next thing so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just be satisfied with what you're doing. And if we become dissatisfied with what we're doing, we can quit doing it long enough to get ourselves back into a state of satisfaction again. And then never mind, start again. But we rarely think of it like that. We always think of, oh, I got to get this done and then I can feel good.
Mhm.
Always delaying our gratification rather than, hey, take your gratification right now. Get yourself into a position to where you feel gratified all the time. Take your gratification right away.
Yeah. Turn instant gratification into a practice rather than a pursuit.
Right. Yeah. Beautifully said. Yes, I like that. Exactly. Right.
That's, that's a mantra right there. I'm not sure how much more time I have you, because I wanted to before I lose you, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your teaching style as well, because I think you have a great pedagogy, as we say in the profession.
Oh, I got a whole big bag full of tricks. Is that what you mean?
Well, um, you have to, as I think you know, I'm a teacher, and I also
Mm-hmm.
love sharing the Dhamma with people. Um, and one thing I admire about you is you seem to be very effective with different types of people, and you have over 1,400 or so recordings of your conversations with your students, and I see you navigate different mental states and mindsets and personalities. And and then recently I saw you talking to somebody who was very young, maybe even a teenager, and you had that person's attention for almost 2 hours. It's hard for me to hold my students' attention for 6 seconds sometimes. So I wanted to ask you about your teaching style, um, and where it comes from, or just share your teaching style with me, and
Can I tell you, introduce it as a joke?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It comes from a movie. And the name of the movie was Robin and the Seven Hoods.
Okay.
And that it was basically it was a movie done by the Rat Pack.
Hmm.
Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, that group. Okay, and one of the songs in that movie was "You Gotta Have Style. All you really need is style." And then they just go right into it, and they're dancing and singing and pointing out the way that each other's are dressed, and like every one of them is in style. All right, so in that regard, they're allowing yourself to have a style
Okay.
of recognizing what you see is valuable, and that gosh, I'm an old man. I've been around. I've been through psychology. I've been through computers. I've been through many things that most of the students haven't seen.
Mhm.
Uh, and so this kind of gives me a foundation of having watched the changes that have happened over the past 50 years. That the people who are younger, they the stuff, they didn't see the evolution of it because they came in late to the movie. They didn't get the first part of the movie. And that gives kind of an advantage of knowing how the thing got started or whatever. And so um, basically, I would say it's the combination of psychology and the Dhamma. That would be the style of being able to put those two together. Now, part of the style also has to do with the quality of dana,
Mhm.
in the sense that many in the psychology, psychotherapy, they're in the business model, expecting the client to pay for what they get, etc., like that, which also has the quality then that it sets up the guru client relationship, and that the, the client keeps paying the therapist, and the therapist keeps dispensing wisdom, and the client is supposed to gain value from that, and that relationship gets stuck sometimes for years. To where with the Dhamma, the way to do it is accept them in that state, but bring them up
Mhm.
to the level of nobility, to bring them up to being their own psychotherapist, to bring them up to the level of no longer a student with a teacher, but just friends. In the Pali, it's called Kalya Metta.
Mhm.
All right, that we're friends together. That's my job, is to become a spiritual friend to help my friends figure out why they keep banging themselves in the head with a hammer.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, look at the hammer.
I get the sense from what you just said, that in a relationship between a therapist and a client, because it's within a capitalist framework, you can say that it's an exchange and it's an economic exchange, but in the Dhamma, it's more of a transmission. You're giving them their own ability to be free rather than keeping them in a state of dependency on you in that exchange.
Hmm. Right. That every one of the students eventually will go through or goes through the quality of, I don't need a guru anymore. That I'm my own lion. I can do this. That's the best part of it. Is when the teacher sees the student grow up to the point that he doesn't need the teacher anymore. That's success. But so many of the students still need a guru. They want the guru. They're dependent upon the guru. They need a guru because they don't have it yet that they can do it themselves. But we have to go through all the way through all three layers of doubt. The doubt is, the guru going to do it for me? No. Well, can I do it for myself? No. Well, then how am I ever going to get doing it? Well, maybe I can do it. All right. And so here we go down through there. And the old master, the only thing he can do is he can sit there and watch it. I've seen that before. But we can't make people see it for themselves. But we can have fun watching other people figuring it out. And there's a lot of joy in that, is to watch the students figuring it out for themselves.
Get
Okay.
a rest watching that, huh? Um, so yeah, as we kind of get to this conversation, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time. That's one thing I find people of that it really impresses me about you. I've never, you're probably the only person I've ever seen that never seems to want anything from anyone, and you give your time very with, with both hands. Um,
Yeah, I've already got everything I need. I've got a paradise here. This is nice stuff.
and also for viewers who don't know you or who haven't seen you, just so they know, um, find you on YouTube at Dhammarato Dhamma, and there you have links to find you on Skype and Sangha groups. And it took me a while to believe this, but you can open your Skype and call Dhammarato at during the you have the time listed there, and you register and you get one-on-one instruction in the Dhamma. And sometimes it looks like a therapy session. Oftentimes it looks like a therapy session. I've seen you navigate some serious some serious mental habits in the past that was really impressive to watch.
Well, that's what it really is all about, is the students have to get to the point that they're really willing to look at their craft.
Mhm.
And here I am with a flashlight.
And a mirror as well. Yeah. So,
Or if the British, it's a torch.
torch, yeah. Yeah, if you're in the UK, the torch. So for viewers, was my, I guess, second to last question would be, what would you say is the first thing someone should, when they close this video, and they're going into their first mind moment after closing this video? What's the first thing they should do?
Remember to take a deep breath and have the thought, wow, that was nice. I could do that. Wow, I could do that. Yeah, I could sit here for a moment and feel good. That's all there is to it. We could do that one thought after another, one moment after another. Life is easy. The practice of the Dhamma is very, very simple. The Eightfold Noble Path is quite simple. To wake up, take a look, make a change, and get a big kick out of it. Congratulate yourself that you can change.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
And then lastly, I just want to know if there was anything else I didn't ask you that you wanted to share or say.
Ah, don't worry. Be happy. You're not hurry. Call. You're not happy. Call me. I make you happy. There's a song in there someplace.
Yes, I think so. Maybe several.
All right, Michael. Thank you. This has been good.
This has been great. Thank you so much, Dhammarato. Once again, thank you for your time, and thank you for what you do and all the time you give to your students.
All right. See you.
And you as well.